You've got to take big chances in order for the potential for a big positive outcome.
We should strive to expand the scope and scale of consciousness to better understand the questions to ask about the answer that is the universe.
The most important mistake I see smart people making is assuming that they're smart.
Need motivation?
Watch a top 10 with Believe Nation.
Top 10, I got a top 10. Got my motivation high for my top 10. Gotta learn from the wise women and men. All my life, like na 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 na. For my top 10, top 10, na 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 na. This one's for my top 10.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because you are probably the most ambitious person in your circle, but you know you're capable of more, and you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Elon Musk, and my take on his top 10 rules for success. Enjoy. Okay, let's kick it off with rule number 1. Take big chances.
I don't really like risk for risk's sake or anything. And I do think that a lot of things are very risky with a low chance of success. But if you want to try to come up with an innovative breakthrough, that's going to be how it is. Anything which is significantly innovative is going to come with a significant risk of failure. But you know, if you've got to take big chances in order for the potential for a big positive outcome. You know, just if the outcome is exciting enough, then taking a big risk is worthwhile.
Yeah.
It's really how I approach it. But then once executing down a path, I actually do my absolute best to reduce risk. You know, or to improve another way of saying it, to improve the probability of success. Because when you try to do something that is very very risky, that you have to spend a lot of effort trying to reduce that risk as you embark down that path. I mean, when I started SpaceX, I thought the odds of success were very low. I thought we'd most likely fail, but I thought, well, we should give it a try nonetheless.
Rule number 2, state the mission.
I think in general, if you want to recruit people that are, really talented and driven, you have to state what's the mission, what's the problem we're trying to solve,
Yep.
and just be clearly willing to pour a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it, and have a convincing argument for why it matters.
Yep.
There's there's three major things for in terms of motivation. It's like, first of all, somebody's got to look forward to coming to work in the morning. Like, if they're are they enjoying the work itself intrinsically? That's very important. And the right work environment can really make a big difference there. I think ideally is that they also feel like that their rewards will receive fair financial compensation, like that the financial rewards are good and fair. And then third, for the best people in the world, they'll want to know, is what they're doing going to matter?
Yep.
If they spend 10 years doing this, will it make a difference to the world, or will people notice? Will it matter?
Rule number 3, align your skills with AI.
Over time, AI will make jobs kind of pointless. Probably the last job that will remain will be writing AI software, and then eventually the AI will just write its own software. So, I don't know, I suppose I would recommend studying engineering, physics, that kind of thing, or working on something where people just want to interact with other people. And people enjoy fundamentally interacting with other people. So if you're working on something that involves people or engineering, it's probably a good approach. Art, of course. Yeah. Like I said, I think we're going to have to figure out this Neuralink situation. Otherwise, we will be left behind. It's very important we do this quickly.
Rule number 4, have a goal.
The reason I got into space was to try to increase NASA's budget.
Well, God bless you then.
So I'll tell you, so the roundabout way I thought that might be accomplished was, I thought, well, if NASA's budget was larger, then we could do more in space exploration. And I thought, well, particularly if we could get the public excited about sending people to Mars. And I thought, well, if I could do a small greenhouse and send that to the surface of Mars with seeds in nutrient gel, and you hydrate the gel on landing, you have a little miniature greenhouse, and then you'd have, the public tends to get excited about precedents and superlatives, so it'd be like the, sort of first life on Mars, the furthest life's ever traveled, and you get people sort of excited about, well, maybe we should send people there, like, the hell with plants, we should send people,
Right.
And then I thought, well, that could, if that could get the public really excited about sending people to Mars, then that would translate into congressional support for a bigger NASA budget. That was the goal. And then I didn't have enough money to buy, and I thought that outcome would have a 100% chance of no commercial success. So the 100% chance of losing all the money. So compared to that, SpaceX, which I thought maybe had a 10% chance of success, that was an improvement.
Also, if you want to have more self-confidence and self-belief, I've designed a special free training to help you do it. The science says it can take up to 254 days of consecutive action to build a new habit. And I want that for you. I want you to build the habit of self-belief. So what I'm going to do is email you every day for 254 days a link to an unlisted video that will shift your belief forward. To get on it for free, the link to join is in the description below.
There are just times when something is important enough, you believe in it enough, that you do it in spite of the fear. If you have a great product, lots of people will buy it. And then the company will be successful. That ended up being worse than if we had designed a car from the beginning.
Rule number 5, think like the consumer.
If you're trying to convince the public to do something, you have to say, okay, how's this going to read? And what message are we going to try to convey? What will people respond to? What would I respond to if I was, sort of an objective member of the public? And so that's really, if you're trying to change people's minds or get people fired up about something, then you got to think, okay, what's that message? What's going to get them really excited?
Rule number 6, desire to learn.
I was always kind of like a crazy kid, I suppose. I was just very curious about the world and how do we come to be here? What's the meaning of life and all that? And I always had a really intense desire to understand things and learn. I had sort of an existential crisis, I guess, when I was 11 or 12 or something, trying to figure out what it's all about, And ultimately came to the conclusion that we don't really know the answer, but if we increase the scope and scale of civilization, then we have a much better chance of understanding the meaning of life and why we're here, or even what are the right questions to ask. So therefore, we should strive to expand the scope and scale of consciousness to better understand the questions to ask about the answer that is the universe.
Rule number 7, make the future.
I would say try to learn as much as possible that allows you to predict the future or make the future. So the saying is the best way to predict the future is to make it. And then assess whether what you're learning is enabling you to predict the future with less error. Are you less wrong? We're always wrong to some degree. But can you reduce the error on your future predictions? I think that's the way to look at education, of course, but it's both create the future, and predict the future. So that includes art and all those other things. But close the loop on being less wrong about future. I would say that's the right way to think about education. I mean, down the road with a Neuralink, you can just upload any subject instantly. So it'll be like the Matrix. You want to fly a helicopter, no problem. Well, helicopters will fly themselves, but if you wanted to do whatever, any given skill, you just upload it instantly. The way education works right now, it's extremely low bandwidth. It's extremely slow. Lectures are the worst, really. It's like very slow. Yeah, just try to predict the future with less error. This is very hard, as you were saying. I'm not sure it's 99.9%, but it's not very good, generally, our prediction of the future. But I think often people don't try. The first thing is try. If you don't try, okay, you got to try, and then adjust based on the error of your prior predictions.
Rule number 8, make as many mistakes.
It's hard to say, because things have worked out pretty well in the end. So how big of a mistake could it have been, as the question is really asking. I did lots of dumb things at my first company and at PayPal, I think sometimes, I don't know. There's so many. I'm hard pressed to say this is the biggest one.
Give us one or two.
Okay.
Personal,
okay, sure.
professional.
The biggest mistake in general that I've made, and I'm trying to correct for that, is to put too much of a weighting on somebody's talent and not enough on their personality. And I've made that mistake several times. In fact, then I would say, gee, I'm not going to make that mistake again, and then I would make it again. And I think it actually matters whether somebody has a good heart. It really does. And I've made the mistake of thinking that sometimes it's just about the brain.
Rule number 9, keep going.
I think I'm kind of constitutionally just geared to just keep going. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it certainly, there are times when things don't go well, and then that's quite dispiriting, for sure. And so then it's difficult to proceed with the same level of enthusiasm. But I do think the things that we're doing are pretty important to the future. And if we don't succeed, then it's not clear what other things would succeed. And if we don't succeed, then we'll be certainly pointed to as a reason why people shouldn't even try for these things. So I think it's important that we do whatever is necessary to keep going.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is have fun.
Okay.
Now I've got some special bonus clips that I think you're going to enjoy. But before that, it's time for the question of the day. I want to know, what was your single biggest takeaway from this video and your plan of action for the next week? When you just watch a video and you get motivated, the science says you have a 35% chance of actually following through. That's not good enough, Believe Nation. We need to take some action. But when you watch a video, you get motivated and you create a specific plan of action, that number jumps from 35% to 91% chance of you following through. And when you publicly commit to other people, like leaving a comment down in this video, your number jumps to 95% chance of you actually following through on the plan you set for yourself. So I want to know your single biggest takeaway from this video and your plan of action for the next week. Leave it down in the comments below so I can celebrate you.
Give me an example, what animals or things that a human being made that is smarter than human beings?
Well, computers actually are already much smarter than people on so many dimensions. We just keep moving the goalposts. So we used to think, like, for example, being good at chess was an example of a smart human. And then Kasparov was crushed by Deep Blue in '97. That was a long time ago. 22 years. I mean, right now your cell phone could crush the world champion at chess, literally. Go used to be thought of as something that humans were better at than computers. Then Lee Sedol was beaten 4-1 by AlphaZero. Then a new version of AlphaZero, I should say AlphaGo. AlphaGo beat Lee Sedol 4-1. Then there's AlphaZero. AlphaZero crushed AlphaGo 100-0. Now it's just pointless because it just keeps playing itself. Humans are trying to play a computer Go is like trying to fight Zeus. It's not going to work. Hopeless. We are hopelessly inadequate. In terms of rendering, basically, there's just a smaller and smaller corner of intellectual pursuits that humans are better than computers, and that every year it gets smaller and smaller, and soon we will be far, far surpassed in every single way, guaranteed. 100%. Or civilization will end. Those are the two possibilities.
We really tried hard to convince a lot of companies. Honestly, I was in so many panels, but they generally generally the sentiment that was expressed that you mentioned earlier, that was pretty much universal. Especially back in, say, 2008 or 2007, like when we first unveiled the Roadster in 2007. Yeah, I mean, it was just basically, they just said, well, you're basically a bunch of fools. Well, I mean, generally they would say, like, well, starting a car company is crazy, you're going to lose all your money. I was like, I think I probably will lose all my money, I agree. It wasn't like I thought it would be successful. I thought we had maybe a 10% chance of success. So then people would say, it's going to fail and you're going to lose everything. I was like, yeah, probably true, yeah. What else is new?
I really need to give some thought to, like, how can I provide advice that would be most helpful? And I'm not sure I've given enough thought to that to give you the best possible answer. But I think certainly being focused on something that you're confident will have high value to someone else, and just being really rigorous in making that assessment, because people tend to. A natural human tendency is wishful thinking. So a challenge for entrepreneurs is to say, well, what's the difference between really believing in your ideals and sticking to them versus pursuing some unrealistic dream that doesn't actually have merit? And that is a really difficult thing to tell. Can you tell the difference between those two things?
Right.
You know? So you need to be sort of very rigorous in your self-analysis. I think certainly extremely tenacious, and then just work like hell. I mean, you just have to put in, 80 to 100 hour weeks every week.
Gosh,
and
that's
then
a lot of work.
All those things improve the odds of success.
Okay.
I mean, if other people are putting in 40-hour work weeks and you're putting in 100-hour work weeks, then even if you're doing the same thing, you know that in 1 year you will achieve what they achieve. You will achieve in 4 months what it takes them a year to achieve.
Innovation comes from questioning the way things have been done before.
Yeah.
And if in the education system you're taught not to do that, that will inhibit entrepreneurship.
Being able to question what you're being taught, being able to...
Yeah. I mean, just, saying, well, is there a better way?
I've heard people say, listen, he's an out-of-the-box thinker, he's a businessman, he's an entrepreneur, but people that know you say...
Really a businessman, I wouldn't say.
You would say?
I'm not really a businessman.
You're not a businessman?
Really.
No?
No.
What are you?
I'm sure there's probably lots of analysts on Wall Street who would agree that I'm not a businessman.
Is it your dream to conquer the world and make the world a better place? What is your dream?
I mean, technology is like magic, I think like technology is the closest thing to magic that we have in the real world. And so I think like engineering, creative engineering is essentially technology development. I guess maybe when I was a kid, like Lord of the Rings is my favorite book.
Is it?
Yeah, and I thought it'd be like, what's the closest thing to being a wizard? in the real world, and that's like creating new technologies. I think just generally the path to leadership should not be through, basically MBA business school situation. It's like, it should be kind of work your way up, do useful things, and there's a bit too much of somebody goes to a high-profile MBA school and then kind of parachutes in as the leader, but they don't actually know how things work. They could be good at, say, PowerPoint presentations or something like that, and they can present well, but they don't actually know how things work because they do not, they parachute in instead of like working their way up.
Yeah, they never went through an apprenticeship, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, they're kind of like just not aware of what's really needed for to make great products. So, I mean, I don't want to trash MBAs too much here, and I actually do have a dual undergrad, Wharton undergrad, and physics at UPenn. So. So I have I have direct exposure to business school, and I went to do undergrad business school with physics. But and I was a teaching assistant for 2 semesters, and I graded MBAs and undergrads. But I think it's just a little bit too much. Like people look at MBA school as like I want to parachute into being the boss instead of earning it, and like I don't think that's good.
Young people globally who want to be like Elon Musk. What's your advice to them?
I think that probably they shouldn't want to be.
You?
I think it sounds better than it is.
Okay.
It's not as much fun being me as you'd think. I don't know.
You don't think so?
No. There's definitely, it could be worse for sure, but it's. I'm not sure I would. I'm not sure I want to be me.
Okay.
But if I think advice. I mean, if you want to make progress in things, I think that the best analytical framework for understanding the future is physics. I'd recommend studying the thinking process around physics, like not the equations. I mean, the equations certainly they're helpful, but the way of thinking in physics is it's the best framework for understanding things that are counterintuitive, and always taking the position that you are to some degree wrong, and your goal is to be less wrong over time. I think one of the biggest mistakes people generally make, and I'm guilty of it too, is wishful thinking. Like you want something to be true, even if it isn't true. And so you ignore the things that, you ignore the real truth because of what you want to be true. This is a very difficult trap to avoid. And like I said, it's certainly one that I find myself in having problems with. But if you just take that approach of you're always to some degree wrong, and your goal is to be less wrong, and solicit critical feedback, particularly from friends. Like particularly friends, if somebody loves you, they want the best for you. They don't want to tell you the bad things. Things that I've chosen have not been, I've not been trying to optimize on a risk-adjusted return basis. So there are, I would not say that I went into the rocket business, the car business, or the solar business thinking that it's a great opportunity. I just thought that something needed to be done in these industries in order to make a difference, and that's why I did it. So, but in general, I do think it's worth thinking about like whether what you're doing is going to result in disruptive change or not. If it's just incremental, it's unlikely to be something major. It's got to be something that's substantially better than what's gone on before.
This is widely regarded as one of the most robotics-driven auto assembly lines on the planet. Elon, part of the thing I heard about the Model 3 is that there's too many robots. That maybe
Yeah, I agree.
You think so too? That maybe you need more people in here working.
We do.
In some cases, the robots actually slowed the production, right?
Yes, they did. We had this crazy complex network of conveyor belts, and it was not working. So we got rid of that whole thing.
This is cool, Elon.
Yeah.
Realizing it needed an overhaul, Musk personally took over the Model 3 production line at the beginning of April.
They're aiming for really extreme levels of precision, more than any other vehicle in the world.
He says he has resorted to pulling all-nighters at the plant.
When things get really intense, I don't have time to go home and shower and change, so I just sleep here.
I want to see. Where is that?
Oh, yeah. So
I want to see.
I mean, it's pretty boring overall, really.
It's actually cold in here too.
Yeah, I like it cold.
So you like it cold?
I sleep on the couch over there.
So you're just laying here on the couch?
Yeah. Last time I was here, I actually slept literally on the floor because the couch was too narrow.
Yeah, I was going to say. And Elon, I have to say, it's not even a comfortable couch either.
No, it's terrible. This is not a good couch.
Musk feels like all the overtime is paying off. And now he says the Model 3 line is back on track.
And we're able to unlock some of the critical things that were holding us back from reaching 2,000 cars a week. But since then, we've continued to do 2,000 cars a week.
Do you think that this is sustainable? This pace is sustainable?
Yeah, so we'll probably have.
What do you look for in the people you hire, especially the engineers?
I really just look for evidence of exceptional ability. So it's not, or at least aspirationally, like sometimes these things get messed up in recruiting, or the recruiting filter ends up being wrong. Like I sometimes wonder with Tesla, if Nikola Tesla applied to Tesla, would we even give him an interview? It's not clear. This guy came from like some weird college somewhere in Eastern Europe. He's got some odd mannerisms. Now, we don't know if we should give him an interview. Like, I worry that that's actually what we do instead of like, it should be like, man, Nikola Tesla, this kid's super smart. What does he want? We'll pay him anything. That should be that should be the reaction if Nikola Tesla applies, to Tesla, ironically. But I can tell you the intent is we're looking for evidence of exceptional ability.
When we talk, I remember when you first told me that you were thinking about tunnels.
When did I first tell you about that?
Years ago.
Okay, it's like a long time ago.
Yeah,
like
I thought you were joking.
Yeah, it was. I was joking, but it's not because of some epiphany that I had one day driving down the 405. That's how it gets translated somehow. I was talking about tunnels for years and years. For probably 5 years or 4 years at least, whenever I'd give a talk and people would ask me about what opportunities do you see in the world, I'd say tunnels. Can someone please build tunnels? So after 4 or 5 years of begging people to build tunnels, and still no tunnels, I was like, okay, I want to build a tunnel. So like maybe I'm missing something here. So I was like basically talking people's ears off of tunnels for several years, and then said, well, let's find out what it takes to build a tunnel. And so I started digging a tunnel. I wanted to start the tunnel from where I could see it from my office at SpaceX. So I said, well, let's just carve off a part of the parking lot across the road so I can see if anything's happening or not. And then we named our first boring machine Godot, because I kept waiting for it. It never came. Finally it did. And we got it going. And now we're making good progress.
I think a lot of times, if you want to do something really innovative, you have to apply a sort of first principles analysis, and don't reason by analogy. Analogies are referencing the past. First principles means you look at the most fundamental truths in a particular arena, and the things that really are almost indisputably correct, and you reason up from there to a conclusion. And if you see that conclusion is at odds with what people generally believe, then you have an opportunity. Now, you can't operate like that on all things because it takes too much mental horsepower. So most of your life you have to operate by reasoning by analogy. But if you really want to innovate, you must reason from first principles to identify the problem.
how do you come with this idea actually? Sometimes they're pushing the human limit. You are always pushing the human limit. Why?
I think about what technology solution is necessary in order to achieve the particular goal. Being a multi-planet species and being out there among the stars is important for the long-term survival of humanity. And that's one reason, kind of like life insurance for life collectively, life as we know it. But then the part that I find personally most motivating is that it creates a sense of adventure. And it makes people excited about the future. If you consider two futures, one where we are forever confined to Earth until eventually something terrible happens, or another future where we are out there on many planets, maybe even going beyond the solar system, I think that second version is incredibly exciting and inspiring, and there need to be reasons to get up in the morning. Life can't just be about solving problems. Otherwise, what's the point? There's got to be things that people find inspiring and make life worth living.
Is it going to be a business, kind of tourism in orbit, or is it more kind of plan B if things on Earth do not develop as well?
It's not exactly a plan B. It's more that I think there's two aspects to this. One is that we want to have a future that is inspiring and exciting. And what are the things that you find inspiring and exciting about the future? And I think a future where we are a spacefaring civilization and out there among the stars, I think that's, every kid gets excited about that. You don't even need to teach them. They just get it. It's like instinctive. And so it's very important for us to have reasons to be excited about life. Like when you wake up in the morning, it can't just be about problems. It's okay. I know everyone in this room deals with a lot of tough problems. But it's got to be more than that. So, I think a future where you can say, hey, even if it's not you, there's going to be people out there. We can have a base on the moon. We're going to have a city on Mars. Maybe go further, moons of Jupiter and everything. I think that's a very exciting future.
How, aside from making great products, how do you get people excited about Tesla? There's a lot of people I know and that I talk to who are just intrigued and interested and excited about Tesla as a company.
The thing I really focus on at Tesla is really put all of our money into and attention into trying to make the product as compelling as possible. So, because I think that the way to sell any product is through word of mouth. So if somebody gets the car, they really like it, and actually the key is to have a product that people will love. Yeah. And generally people, if they're at a party or talking to friends or whatever, you'll talk about the things that you love.
The output is more valuable than the inputs, which is really, that's profit. The output's more valuable than the input. That says you have a useful company. But in a high growth scenario, you have a lot more inputs for future outputs, so that you have negative cash flow and lack of profitability, and which we currently have at Tesla. But in the long term, of course, that has to be fixed. There can't be negative cash flow in the long term, and that there needs to be a net positive output, which is sort of profits in the long term. But in the short term, when there's high growth, it isn't the most sensible thing.
Zip2 happened. You sold it, and
and bought the McLaren. Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, you invested most of that money into your next venture, X.com.
That's right. Most of the funds went into X.com, which was later renamed PayPal, and that worked out pretty well.
It worked out pretty well, but looking back on it, because you put a lot of your eggs in that basket, would you advise entrepreneurs to roll the bones quite the way you did?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think it's worth investing your own capital in what you do. I don't believe in the sort of other people's money thing. I think if you're not willing to put your own assets at stake, then you shouldn't ask other people to do that.
You said something which caught my attention, that when you were in college and developing these skills, you wanted to do some things that were of benefit to humanity. Why did you think that? Well, because not everyone does.
Yeah, no, I guess it was, I had sort of an existential crisis of like, what does it all mean, and what's the meaning of life, and
was this 3 a.m. over a beer, or this was more serious?
It probably goes back to high school, I guess. I don't want to give a laboriously long answer, but I was, I had sort of a dark childhood. It wasn't good. Probably partially brought on by reading some of the philosophers. Like, don't ever read Schopenhauer and Nietzsche if you're 14. It's not good.
Yeah, or Ayn Rand either, too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was just trying to figure out what does it all mean, and actually, when I read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I think is a great work of philosophy, that sort of highlighted the point that very often the issue is understanding what questions to ask. And if you can properly frame the question, then the answer is the easy part. So I thought things that expand the scope and scale of the human consciousness and allow us to better ask questions and achieve greater enlightenment, those are good things. And so that's sort of what can we do that's going to most likely lead to that outcome.
So this was X.com was a precursor to PayPal, basically.
That's right, yeah.
You merged with Confinity, and it became PayPal major success.
Yeah, so it worked out better than we expected. Yeah. So yeah, Confinity. So initially, Confinity and X.com started out from slightly different directions, and then converged to the same point. With X, the thought was to create an integrated set of financial services, so you could go to one place and do all of your financial anything. And then as a feature, we had the ability to transfer money or securities or anything simply by entering a unique identifier. So like a email address or phone number or something like that. When we would demo the system, the hard stuff, which was the integration of all the financial services, people would not be interested in, but they'd be really interested in being able to transfer money using an email address, even though that was actually quite easy. And so we focused our energy on that. And although it's easy in principle, what gets really hard is adding security while still keeping it easy to use. So, because it's like the Willy Loman quote, like why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is. So why do people rob PayPal? Same reason.
Right.
And so you can dial up the security to a really high level, but then you're going to make it very hard to use. Well, we don't think too much about what competitors are doing.
Yeah.
Just because I think it's important to be just focused on making the best possible products. It's sort of maybe analogous to what they say about if you're in a race.
Yeah.
Don't worry about what the other runners are doing.
Yeah.
Just run.
You're 47. What is the likelihood that you personally will go to Mars?
70%. We've recently made a number of breakthroughs that I'm just really fired up about.
And when does that happen? In our lifetimes?
Yeah. I'm talking about moving there. So it's like if you can get the price per ticket maybe around $200,000.
This could be an escape hatch for rich people.
No, your probability of dying on Mars is much higher than Earth. Really, the ad for going to Mars would be like Shackleton's ad for going to the Antarctic. It's going to be hard. There's a good chance of death. Going in a little can through deep space. You might land successfully. Once you land successfully, there will be you'll be working nonstop to build the base. So not much time for leisure. And once you get there, even after doing all this, there's a very harsh environment, so there's a good chance you die there. We think you can come back, but we're not sure. Now, does that sound like an escape hatch for rich people?
And yet you would unhesitatingly go.
There's lots of people that climb mountains. Why do they climb mountains? Because people die on Mount Everest all the time. They like doing it for the challenge. The key to making things affordable is like designing. It's like design and technology improvements as well as scale. So if you think of like say phones, like the very earliest, like the earliest cell phones. Like I don't know if you remember, I'm probably like dating myself here, but like the original Wall Street, where the guy's like walking down the beach and he's got like the
it's like on a
giant phone.
He's carrying on like a briefcase kind of thing. They're massive. Yeah.
Like massive phone.
Yeah.
And like all it could do is phone.
Yep.
And like had like 30 minutes of battery life and that kind of thing. Now, at that time, in the absence of technology improvements, like no amount of money, no amount of scale could have made that phone affordable. that to be a lot of engineering iterations, a lot of design iterations, and we're probably, I don't know, on the 30th version of a cell phone. And with each successive design iteration, you can add more capability, you can integrate more things, you figure out better ways to produce it. So it actually gets better and cheaper, but it's like a natural progression of any new technology that it takes multiple versions and a large volume in order to make it affordable.
When did it occur to you that Zip2 might be a success?
Well, I mean, when we first started out, I think our ambitions were really quite low. It was really to make enough money to pay the rent.
Yeah, we got a VC give us money. That was, yay!
Yeah.
We thought it was all over then.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I mean, when we started out in '95, we literally, at the beginning, we had one computer, which would be the web server during the day, and then at night, I'd program on it. And
we'd sleep in the office.
Yeah,
we couldn't afford to have an apartment.
It was cheaper to rent the office than to rent an apartment, so we just rented the office and slept in the office and showered at the YMCA.
Showered at the YMCA. And for me, the worst part was eating at Jack in the Box 3 times a week.
Yeah, man, this like
I'll sleep.
It's really difficult to get food at Palo Alto after like 10 p.m. Through the end of '95, where that's essentially we're just sleeping in the office and showering at the YMCA, and then around the end of '95 is when Netscape went public, and then whether or not somebody knew what the internet was, they knew that you could make money on the internet somehow, or even if it's only on the greater fool theory. So. When we went and talked to venture capitalists in early '96, there was a much greater interest in what we were doing. In fact, the round closed in like maybe a week or something.
It was crazy. Yeah, we went from sleeping in the office to people throwing, I mean, again, this is a financial crowd, so you guys see these numbers every day, but for us to hear, we'll give you $3 million.
Yeah, it sounded extremely, we thought they were crazy. Like, why would they do that?
It was literally like, these people are insane.
They obviously do not realize we're sleeping in the office.
In fact, when they did fund us, they realized that we were illegal immigrants.
Well, I mean,
yes, we were.
I'd say it was a gray area.
Yeah, yes, we were. We were illegal immigrants. We were sleeping in the office. We didn't have a car. We had one car, but the wheel kept falling off.
But, well, actually, yeah, the wheel did actually fall off the car. I think that the way that we currently do education is wrong, and when you see something like the Khan Academy and so forth, I think that's probably going in the right direction. I mean, generally you want education to be like as close to a video game as possible, like a good video game. Like, you do not need to tell your kid to play video games. They will play video games on autopilot all day. So if you can make it interactive and engaging, then you can make education far more compelling and far easier to do. So I think that's how it should be, and it shouldn't be that you've got like these grades where people move in lockstep, and so everyone goes through, goes like normally, we'll go through English, math, science, and so forth from like 5th grade to 6th grade to 7th grade, like it's an assembly line. But people are not objects on an assembly line. That's a ridiculous notion. People learn and are interested in different things at different paces. So you really want to disconnect the whole grade level thing from the subjects. Allow people to progress at the fastest pace that they can or are interested in each subject. Well, I mean, Tesla really faced a severe threat of death due to the Model 3 production ramp. Essentially, the company was bleeding money like crazy, and just if we didn't solve these problems in a very short period of time, we would die. And it was extremely difficult to solve them.
How close to death did you come?
Within single-digit weeks.
22 hours a day, or like what? How many hours?
I was working, so 7 days a week, sleeping in the factory. I worked in the paint shop, general assembly, body shop.
You ever worry about yourself imploding? Like it's just too much?
Absolutely. No one should put this many hours into work. This is not good. And people should not work this hard. They should not do this. It's very painful.
Painful in what sense?
It hurts my brain and my heart. So
This is not recommended for anyone. I just did it because if I didn't do it, then Tesla, good chance Tesla would die. Other car companies just really want to outsource battery technology, not even making this battery module and cell, but they're obviously outsourcing the cells, but even outsourcing the modules and the packs. You know, and it's like they're really not thinking about fundamental chemistry improvements. And so I should say a bit about like electric vehicles or sustainable energy in general. You know, I said it was pretty, I think, obvious to not just to me, but to a lot of people, even go back 30 years or longer, that we must have a sustainable energy solution. In fact, it's tautological. If it's not sustainable, we must at some point find an alternative to it. And so, even if there were no environmental impact to the sort of a fossil fuel economy, then we would run out of them, and then we'd have economic collapse, and civilization would fall apart. So that was actually my initial motivation for electric vehicles. It's like, okay, we've got to have a solution that does not require mining hydrocarbons, that is sustainable in the long term. It was not actually initially from an environmental standpoint, because I did not realize the gravity of the environmental situation at that time.
You need a team around you to deliver a lot of idea. How do you choose your team? Based on what?
Well, I suppose honestly that it tends to be gut feel more than anything else. So when I interview somebody, my interview question is always the same.
What do you ask?
I said, tell me the story of your life, and the decisions that you made along the way and why you made them. And then, and also tell me about some of the most difficult problems you worked on and how you solved them. And that question, I think, is very important, because the people that really solved the problem, they know exactly how they solved it. They know the little details. It is definitely true that, I mean, maybe there are occasionally companies that get created where there's not an extended period of extreme pain, but I'm not aware of very many of such instances.
Yeah.
So, but I do think that new great entrepreneurs are born every day.
Yeah.
And we'll continue to see amazing companies get built. You want to make something beautiful. I mean, you want to trigger whatever fundamental aesthetic algorithms are like in your brain. You have, I think, some intrinsic elements that represent beauty, and that trigger the emotion of appreciation of beauty in your mind. And I think that these are actually relatively consistent among people. I mean, not completely. Some people not everyone likes the same thing, but there's a lot of commonality. But I think it is important to combine aesthetic design with functionality. Like the thing that's, like if you say like what was really hard about, say, the Model S or the Model X, was to combine aesthetics and utility. So to balance the two. You can make a car look very good by giving it sort of certain proportions, like making it sort of low and slim, but if you do that, the utility is significantly affected. And we're focused on, like I said, it is important to have the objective be right. That's why I was talking so much about the importance of making Mars building a self-sustaining city on Mars. If that's the objective, then obviously, just putting some satellites in orbit that's not important. You have to achieve full and rapid reusability. I emphasize full and rapid. Reusability is only relevant to the degree it's rapid and complete. And then you also have to do orbital refilling. This is essential as well. And then propellant production on Mars, also essential. So,
with that as the goal, then that means that creates, I think, a good forcing function for radical innovation, because in the absence of radical innovation, we have no chance of meeting that goal. Whereas if our goal is simply, defeat Lockheed and Boeing or something like that, that we would probably achieve.
You've already done it.
That really wasn't even a thing, Yeah. I wish it was. They're not really not even trying to do reusability, which is bizarre because they make planes that are reusable. So, I mean, if they talk to if they talk to one of their customers, buys a Lockheed fighter jet or a Boeing aircraft, like, hey, we're going to sell you a 737. It can be used once, and it's not 737 Max. But that turns out that was a single-use airplane at times. But it really. It would be an absurd thing for them to sell a single-use aircraft, but they feel quite comfortable selling a single-use rocket. And anyway, but if our goal was simply we're going to be the leaders in launching the conventional satellites that exist, we would probably approach that on a sort of a logarithmic basis, where you'd get there and you'd sort of slowly make progress towards doing 10 launches a year, 12 launches a year, and while they do 6 or something like that. I don't know. But since the goal is, hey, we need to make life multiplanetary before it's too late, and time really matters. So it's like we're shooting for Mars, not just the moon. It's not let's shoot for the moon, shoot for Mars. And then these competitive things are kind of small things along the way. Unless somebody else is shooting for Mars, they will not be competitive with something as pedestrian as launching a few satellites into Earth orbit.
So how do you keep your focus on the big picture when you're constantly faced with, we could be out of business in a month?
Well, it's just a very small percentage of mental energy is on the big picture. Like you know where you're generally heading for, and the actual path is going to be some sort of zigzaggy thing in that direction. You try not to deviate too far from the path that you want to be on, but you're going to have to do that to some degree. But I don't want to diminish the. I mean, I think the profit motive is a good one if the rules of an industry are properly set up. So there's nothing fundamentally wrong with profit. In fact, profit just means that people are paying you more for whatever you're doing than you're spending to create it. That's a good thing. and if that's not the case, then you'll be out of business, and rightfully so. Because you're not adding enough value.
I keep hearing you say we. Like, it sounds like you're always thinking of everybody. I see you as a very selfless person.
Thanks.
I mean, seriously. I mean, yeah. It's like from the age of 12, it sounds like you've been thinking about how to help humanity.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to be sort of like some, the sort of savior or something like that, but it's really just that if it just seems like I don't know, seems like the obvious thing to do. I'm not sure why you do anything else. We want to maximize happiness of the population and propagate into the future as far as possible, and understand the nature of reality. And from that, I think everything else follows. Just in general, critical thinking is good. Examining whether you have the correct axioms, are the most applicable axioms, does the logic necessarily connect, and then what are the range of probable outcomes? Outcomes are usually not deterministic. They're a range, and so you want to figure out what those probabilities are, and make sure, ideally, that you're the house. And the way I tend to view problems is from a physics standpoint. I think physics is a good analytical framework, and one of the key things in physics is to reason from first principles. This is contrary to the way most human reasoning takes place, which is by analogy. reasoning from first principles just means that you figure out what are the fundamental truths or things that people are pretty sure are fundamental truths, and can you build up to a conclusion from that, from those principles, and then certainly if you come up with some idea and it appears to violate one of those fundamental truths, then you're probably wrong. Or you should get a really big prize or something like that. This may seem like, I don't know, it may seem sort of obvious when it's explained, but it's actually not what people do. Reasoning by analogies is helpful because it's a shortcut.
Yeah.
And it's mostly correct, but it tends to be most incorrect when you're dealing with new things, because it's hard to analogize to something really new.
I mean, as long as people stay super focused on creating the absolute best product or service that really delights their end customer, if they stay focused on that, then if you get it such that your customers want you to succeed, then you probably will.
Back in '95, there weren't very many people on the internet, and certainly nobody was making any money at all. Most people thought the internet was going to be a fad.
A year ago, Musk sold his software company, Zip2, which enabled newspapers to publish online for $400 million cash.
Receiving cash is cash. I mean, those are just a large number of Ben Franklins.
So this is an ATM. What we're going to do is transform the traditional banking industry.
I do not fit the picture of a banker.
X.com, this is Julie.
Raising $50 million is a matter of making a series of phone calls, and the money is there. I've sunk the great majority of my net worth into X.com, which is the new banking and mutual funds company on the internet that I've started.
Big X.
Exactly. X.com.
I think X.com could absolutely be a multi-billion-dollar bonanza, because if you look at the industry that X is pursuing.
I mean, what you've got going on with the internet is it's basically like an earthquake where the epicenter is Silicon Valley, and it's shaking up the whole world.
Unfortunately, one does have to be focused on the short term and money coming in when creating a company, because otherwise the company will die. So I think that a lot of times people think like creating a company is going to be fun. I would say it's not. It's really not that fun. I mean, there are periods of fun, and there are periods of where it's just awful. And particularly if you're the CEO of the company, you actually have a distillation of all the worst problems in the company. There's no point in spending your time on things that are going right. So you only spend your time on things that are going wrong. And there are things that are going wrong that other people can't take care of. So you have like the worst. You have a filter for the crappiest problem in the company, the most pernicious and painful problem. So I wouldn't say I think you have to feel quite compelled to do it, and have a fairly high pain threshold. And there's a friend of mine who says like starting a company is like staring into the abyss and eating glass. And there's some truth to that. The staring into the abyss part is that you're going to be constantly facing the extermination of the company, because most startups fail. It's like 90%, arguably 99% of startups fail. So that's the staring into the abyss part. You're constantly saying, okay, if I don't get this right, the company will die. It can be quite stressful. And then the eating glass part is you've got to do the problems. You've got to work on the problems that the company needs you to work on, not the problems you want to work on. And so that's you end up working on problems that you'd really wish you weren't working on. And so that's the eating glass part. And that goes on for a long time.
So how do you keep your focus on the big picture when you're constantly faced with, we could be out of business in a month?
Well, it's just a very small percentage of mental energy is on the big picture. Like you know where you're generally heading for, and the actual path is going to be some sort of zigzaggy thing in that direction. You try not to deviate too far from the path that you want to be on, but you're going to have to do that to some degree. But I don't want to diminish the. I mean, I think the profit motive is a good one if the rules of an industry are properly set up.
So there's nothing fundamentally wrong with profit. In fact, profit just means that people are paying you more for whatever you're doing than you're spending to create it. That's a good thing. and if that's not the case, then you'll be out of business, and rightfully so. Because you're not adding enough value.
Elon, you've been compared to Henry Ford, Richard Branson, Steve Jobs. Who do you compare yourself to?
I don't really compare myself to anyone. It's not. There's certain people that I admire from history that I think are great. Certainly many of the scientists and engineers and literary figures and so forth. I'm a big fan of Ben Franklin. Who's a scientist and sort of thinker, and he was the kind of guy who did what needed to be done. Well, I think part of the problem, the reason people aren't as excited about space is that we haven't been pushing the frontier as much. And so you can only watch the same movie so many times before it gets a little boring. In the 60s and early 70s, we were really pushing the frontier of human spaceflight. And obviously those landing on the moon is regarded as one of the greatest achievements of humanity, arguably of life itself. And even though only a handful of people went to the moon, vicariously we all went there. Well, at least I wasn't alive at the time, but retrospectively. And it was just one of those really inspiring things that I think made everyone glad to be human. It's like the things that they're bad things humanity does, and they're good things, and this is one of the good things. And I do think it's important that we have these inspiring things that make you glad to get up in the morning and glad to be a member of the human race. And we need to push that frontier. And I think the great goal we should be trying to pursue is trying to make life make life multiplanetary. Mm-hmm. So to establish a self-sustaining and growing civilization on another planet, Mars being the only realistic possibility, and I think that would just be one of the greatest things humanity could ever try to do.
If you want even more Elon Musk, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
You want to make something beautiful. That you want to trigger whatever fundamental aesthetic algorithms are like in your brain. There's